Hello and welcome to this session on the pages. The agenda for today's session is an overview of the pages, what pages are in the Onfinity framework, and how pages can be created. There are two different ways in which pages can be created in the Onfinity framework. One method is with the help of partial views, and the other is with the help of jQuery. Then we'll go through the methods that need to be implemented when writing pages in the Onfinity framework. There are init and dispose functions that must be included in the page when writing the code for the pages. Then, we will cover the different types of pages and how they are displayed on the UI. There are different page types. One is the menu pages, which are directly open from the menu. Another one is the pages that are linked on the button with the screen. You can also bind the pages on the screen on a particular button. Then, there are different options provided in the framework in the form of C-frames and child dialogues. We'll learn in this session how these C-frames and child dialogues are created. Then, there's another option that can be implemented with the pages: custom headers. The default framework provides you with default headers, but you can also customize your page headers according to your requirements. Now, how do we bind a page to the menu? First, go to the menu configuration screen in the menu itself. Then, navigate to the page and provide the page details as shown in the next slide. After that, grant access to the roles that will be accessing the page. The next step is to navigate back to the menu configuration screen. Create a new record in the menu and select the action as page. There are multiple actions available, such as job, page workflow, or page. Select page as the action, then bind the page in the drop-down menu to specify which page you want to open. As you can see here, this is the page screen where you need to provide a name for the page. It should be prefixed with your module name. Then, provide the display name of the page that will be shown to the user. You also need to include the general description and a comment explaining what the page does, how it works, and its purpose within the Onfinity system. Then, in the class name field, you need to provide the name of the class that you've written as a jQuery class before the page opens from this menu item. The class name must be provided here. Next, another option allows you to bind the page to a button on the screen. First, go to the menu and navigate to the page screen. Provide the page details as shared in the next slide. We have already seen how the page details should be displayed or provided. Then, provide access to the page for the roles of users who will be accessing that page. The next step is to navigate to the database schema from the menu. Go to the specific column where you want the page to open from. Then, navigate to the column and bind the page with it. This page is the same one we've seen in the previous slide. Here, I just want to bind this page with the column generating the voice time record. You'll need to provide the page details along with this button. So, these are the two different types of pages that can be created or accessed from the Onfinity system. There are a few things you need to note. First, you have to make the entry in the module management with your module prefix. Then, the prefix should be used on the page screen and in the name field, as we've seen in the previous slide. The assembly name and namespace should also follow your module prefix in your partner kit or development project. Then, the reference to the Vienna Advantage project should be included in the Vienna Advantage web project while you are developing the page. These are a few settings you need to configure when generating or developing a page. Now, let's see how we can create the page at the code level. Before proceeding with the coding part, let's differentiate between screens and pages. We've already gone through screens in the configuration part. Screens are configurable, and they can include tables, columns, and a number of fields on the UI. You'll get a fixed kind of menu on all the screens, which includes the default functionality for creating a new record, saving, updating, and deleting within the framework. Additionally, there are filter options on the right-hand side, as well as configurable window or screen actions for all the screens. Let me show you how the screens are displayed on the UI, and then we will go through how the pages are displayed on the UI. I will log in with my tenant credentials here. First, let's open the Customer Master. This is the screen where we have the Customer Master displayed. This is the landing page. Right now, there are no widgets on this screen. And then you have the customer details. As I mentioned, on the left-hand side, you will see the filter. It is again configurable, but on the menu side, you have options like New Record, Delete, Save, Refresh, and Report. On the right-hand side, as you can see, there is a filter option available where you can search for any record. Let's say we search for this one. The record will get filtered here. There's also an advanced filter option, along with the actions that are configurable on all the screens. You can configure these actions screen by screen. If I toggle it to single layout mode, you will see these fields on the UI. With the header panel on the left-hand side, you can design the screens accordingly, and on the top, you can define these header panels as well. These are examples of screens. If I show you another user screen, like user management, you'll see how it's laid out similarly. This is another screen where, as I mentioned, the header panel is linked at the top. On the screen, you have functionalities for New, Delete, Save, Report, and the search feature. Again, there are actions that are configurable on the screen. Now let's see how the pages look. If I open one of the pages, like the payment page or payment form, here's how it appears. On the left-hand side, these dropdowns or datetime fields are created with jQuery. These are HTML controls or Onfinity framework controls. The section on the page is created with the help of jQuery, HTML, and CSS. On the right side, we have these sections. These are customizable pages where you don't get default functionalities like New, Save, or Delete, which we see on the screens. Here, you have to configure or code everything yourself. This section is for the developer, who will write the code to define how the page should look on the UI. One example of a page is the marketplace, where we download and install modules onto our instance. This is another type of page with a different UI. On the left-hand side, you have the module section. And when you select a particular module, you can install it using the corresponding button. Right now, I'm not logged in with the system administrator role, which is why I'm seeing this message. Modules can only be installed from the system administrator role, and I'm logged in with my tenant credentials. Let's go through the code and see how we write it into our pages. What I'll do is open my Visual Studio. Here, we'll be using our development kit or the partner kit for the development of our pages. As we mentioned in the other sessions, we will create the pages inside the Vienna Advantage project. This Vienna Advantage SVC project is for M classes, X classes, and jobs. The Vienna Advantage project is for callouts and the pages. As we follow the module level approach, we have this area here where we are using VA001 as our module prefix. Inside this project, we already have folders for contents, controllers, models, scripts, and views. Additionally, there is the area registration class. We have also configured Webpack onto this project. So, what we will do now is see how the pages are created in the system. In the script section, we have the apps folder. Inside the apps folder, there is a forms folder, and within the forms folder, we have the form.js file. If you open this form.js, you will find a sample class that is already available in this section. So here we have the module namespace initialization with our module prefix. Then we have the module prefix code here, the self-wrapping invoker function, and we are assigning this namespace to the apps folder. It's up to us whether we want to assign this to the apps folder or not. It depends on our requirement. We can either use mpc.apps or remove it, and directly use mpc.module prefix code, followed by the name of your page. But for simplicity, I will keep it as it is for now. Now, what we will do is change the module prefix code. and replace every occurrence in this particular class with our module prefix, which is VA001. I will replace all occurrences. 11 occurrences are done. Now, we have this module prefix here, and we've removed the previous one. It's up to us whether we want to create a separate page or the same page. What I will do is copy the entire code from this class. So if we need to create one or more pages in this section, I can reuse the code in another page. So, I will add another JavaScript class. Let's say I will define my class as addCustomer.js. Once I add the JavaScript file, it will automatically be named with this file name. In this addCustomer.js class, I will paste all the code from the form.js class, like this. Now, whatever changes I make, I will do them in this particular class. I will copy the code and replace it with my module prefix code in the current document. This is done, so I will save it. Now this is the name of our class that we want to create or use in our page. So what I will do is copy this and replace it again in the same document with the name addCustomer. This will be the name of our class in the page. I will replace it, and that is it. addCustomer will be my class name. We have used initialize component here, along with the self function. That is pretty much it. So, if I save it and build the code, it will take some time as we are doing this build for the first time. Once the build is completed, it says, build succeeded, and then I will run the code. We haven't changed anything in the code as of now. Whatever is in the sample code, I just renamed the MPC with my module prefix, and the name of my page with the name I want to give for my page. Now I will log in with my system credentials first, as we need to define from where this page should open. I log in with my system credentials, and then we have a screen with the name of the page. I will open that page screen where we will define the page for our screen. Let's say VA001. The name field should contain a prefix, followed by customer details. The display name should be without the prefix, as this display name will be shown to the user, for example, customer details page. For the description, you can write something like page to display details of the customer, and add a new customer. A brief explanation of what the page will do. In the help section, you can add more detailed information, such as add a new customer via the page, and also display all info of the customer on the page itself. Next, the data access level must be defined here. Who will be using this page? Finally, the class name should be defined with the name we have used for our page. I will copy it to ensure there are no typos, then save it. The record is saved now. I have defined the page, and then you need to provide access. If there is a tenant available here to which I want to provide access, but I don't have this in the admin tenant, what I will do is define the menu first. After logging into that particular tenant, I will provide access to my page in the menu configuration. Again, I will create a new record so that this page will be displayed in the menu. Now I will create a new record, and the name of the menu will be Customer Details Page. In the description, I will write page to display details of the customer and add a new customer. This is just a description of what the page will do. For the action, it will be form or page, so I will select form here. When you select the action as form or page, you will see another dropdown where I can select the page that I have created. Once I select it, I will save this record. Now I have created the menu, and I have already created my page. The next step is to provide access to this page for the tenant. I log in with this tenant role, and from the menu, I will go to the role screen. Based on the role settings, access can be defined at either the system administrator role or the tenant role. At the role level, you will find a checkbox labeled Manual, which determines whether access can be provided manually or at the tenant level. This is where you define how the access should be granted. So here the manual is set to false. Now I will go to my page, create a new record, and select Customer Details page. I will provide the access and save it. Now that I have provided the access, I will do a cache reset and refresh the link. After that, in the menu, you will see the Customer Details page listed. Right now, this page will not open or load into the DOM because we have not provided the path for our page in the JavaScript or jQuery file. Since we have implemented Webpack, we need to specify the path for the page. As you can see, we have the src folder here. In the va001.js file, we need to import the JavaScript file that we just added. The path for this is scripts, apps, forms, and then the file is addcustomer.js. For all the jQuery classes you create in this area section, it is mandatory to provide them in the src folder within this particular class. As we have implemented Webpack, we have now defined it here. If I run this, we have created the page, added the entry in the page screen, created a menu for our page, and provided the access. Now I will log in with my tenant role, do a hard refresh once, and then search for my page, which is the Customer Details page. Here the Customer Details page looks like this, which is the default layout provided in the demo page. This page has the header at the top, displaying the name of the page, which is coming from the page screen. There's also fixed text here, along with a cross icon. Additionally, we have the OK and Close buttons. Let's see where these buttons are coming from. In this code, as you can see, the initialize component function is being called. We have the root defined here, and we also have the text for the OK button and the cancel button, which are HTML controls created within the code. Then we have a div element where this name is displayed. This particular text is what is being shown on the page. This is a sample design that shows how these controls are created. Now we can customize this page based on our requirements, how our page should look, and what content we want to include. What I will do is create a simple page that will display a text box and a button, similar to the controls you've seen in the Onfinity framework. We will have text box buttons, search controls, where you can select a particular value for a record, and other controls like dropdowns, checkboxes, and datetime controls. On the right-hand side, we will display a grid that shows the details of the customer, which will fetch the data from the customer table. So, these are a few variables which we have created over here. I will keep it as it is, or maybe I will just remove this design. I'll cancel the current initialize component here, and instead write a function, let's say this.init or initialize, and set it equal to a function. In this function, I will call initialize component to initialize our design. We've removed these buttons as well, so I'll remove this text. After that, I will create the necessary variables to handle the controls we want to display. I will assign the self scope pointer to, let's say, self equals to this, and then I will define the root here, initializing it with a div. We already have this class defined, so I'll set a style, such as display, to position the controls as needed. Again, as I mentioned, it's up to us how we want our page to look and how the controls should be placed on the UI. This flexibility allows us to design the page exactly the way we want, adjusting layout, styles, and functionality as per our requirements. So, what I have done is create a simple root, a simple div element here. In the getRoot function, we call this root, And in the initialize component function, I will define the design for my page. After that, we no longer need the buttons, so I've removed them. This is the init function, which is called from the framework when a user searches for our page from the menu. In the menu, when the frame and window number are created as a parameter, we will pass this window number to the window number variable. This variable will hold the window number passed from the page. This window number is assigned to the window number variable. We will use this window number to create our controls. Then we will call this .initialize, where we will initialize our design. Now, let's see how this function is called and how the page looks after it is built. This will give us a preview of the page layout and functionality once the design is initialized and the controls are set up. Now, I have removed these default controls from my page so that I can define my own controls on the page. I will just refresh it, and you can see now that the customer details page is visible. If I inspect the page, you will see that the root div we created occupies the entire area of the page. Now, it's up to us what kind of controls we want to add to our page and how the page should look. What I will do next is close this and then add 2 different sections onto the page. This will allow us to organize the layout and content based on our requirements. In the initialize component from the init section, when this init is called from the framework, this initialize is called, and here this initialize component is called. In this initialize component, we will load our design, which we will create with the help of our jQuery code. So, what I will do is create 2 variables here. Let us say the left side section and the right side section. In the left side section, we will add a div. Let us say the div style equals to width 20%, padding 5 pixels, and border right 1 pixel solid light gray. We will then close this div tag. In the right side section, we will set the width to 80%, apply the necessary padding, and remove any unnecessary styling. So, we have 2 sections, one is left and another one is right. The left section will occupy 20% of the screen size, and on the right side, we will have 80%. Then we will append this into our root, with left side section append right side section like this. Now, we have created 2 different sections, one for 20% and another for 80%. Build this code and run it. It should create 2 different areas, one on the left-hand side consuming 20% of the screen, where we will create controls later on to add a new customer, and on the right-hand side, we will display the grid showing the customer data. From the menu, I will now open the customer details page. As you can see, there is the left section occupying 20% of the area, and the right section occupying 80% of the area, where we will display the grid. So on the left-hand side, we will now add the controls. What I will do is copy the code to create the controls on the left-hand side, and then we will see how the code is written to create the controls. I will use the framework controls that are available. I'll create a few examples, such as textbox buttons, labels, textboxes, checkboxes, and buttons. So, let us see how these controls are created. You can create your own HTML controls, which depends on your requirements and how you want the controls to appear on the UI. This also influences how your UI should look. Here, after adding these, I will add one control that is used to create the control on the UI. Now, I have this customer div, which I have created as a default blank div. The customer div is initialized as null here, and the control is also set to null. For the control, I'll say this .search customer equals to null. I will explain what this code is doing, and then I will append this to the left side section. So here we have the customer div, which serves as the container for our control. Then we have this validation, where we want to load all the customers that are active and have the condition where customer underscore y equals n. This is the validation condition for loading the reference table data directly onto the control. The table for this customer data is C underscore B underscore partner, and we want to load all the active customers. This condition can be written like a where clause, filtering the data based on the required criteria. Then, we have the customer div, where framework classes are applied so that our controls look like the ones we have used in the framework. These are the classes that you need to use on the div, specifically on the container div of that control. Then, we have created the lookup for our control. There are different types of references, as you might have seen in the framework at the column level when we create any control on the UI for the screens. Similarly, when creating the control with the help of the jQuery code, you need to create the lookup and assign that lookup to the text box. In this case, we are creating the customer lookup as we want to display the customer data. So here, as you can see, the customer lookup is called from this vis.mLookupFactory.get. We are passing the context, and the window number, as a unique window number, is assigned to all the screens or pages that are opened from the menu into the UI. This is the column ID of the C underscore B underscore partner underscore ID column, which we want to create on the UI as a lookup or the search control. Here, the display type of the control is specified. There are different types of display types in the framework: search, table direct, multi-search, text, text box, and multi-text. So these controls and types of search can be defined here. Based on this, your control will be created. You may have seen the search control on the UI. Then, we have the column ID here, which specifies which column we want to create. We also have a few default parameters and the validation code for this. This will create a lookup control for you. Next, we will create the vTextbox button, which is the search control on the UI, with parameters like the CB partner ID. The next parameter is mandatory. If you pass it as true, the control will look like a mandatory one. Then, for read-only, if we do not want it to be read-only, we pass it as false. The update table parameter determines whether this control is updatable. We pass it as true. The display type of the control will be search, and the customer lookup we created will be used to create the lookup for that text box button, thus rendering the search control on the UI. Then the button control will be created with the control rep. You need to use the same syntax if you want to create this text box button on the UI. After that, we are using the customer div and appending this control to it. We get the control, append it to the control rep div, and assign some attributes. Here, we are also assigning the label to the control and the text box control. Then, a button is always there, as you might have seen in the framework controls. This button is used to open the pop-up of the lookup information, allowing you to search the record. Finally, we append this into the customer div, which serves as the container or parent container, and then, eventually, into the left side section on the UI. Now, if I build this code and refresh the link, you can see the customer details page, and we have this control created. When you click on it, you will see this control, which is similar to the controls created on the screen. This provides you with the default functionality of the framework control, where you can search for a particular value and select that value into this control, just like this. This is the code that has created this particular control on the UI. Similarly, we will add a few more controls to our left-hand side div, where they will be used to search for customer details. The results will then be displayed on the right-hand side. Just wanted to show you how the framework controls and the alternative framework controls are used on the page for you to use. Now, I will create a few more controls on the left side div, including a text box, label, and checkbox. So I will copy the code like this over here. I have these controls. I will create this label with the name of Add Customer, where we have this Add Customer section. Then, I will add a customer name text box, where we will enter the name of the customer to save into the new record. After that, I will add a description for that customer, and then the business partner group and business partner category drop-downs on the UI. Finally, I will add a checkbox. So, these controls we have to initialize here, like we have initialized the search customer. So, all these controls I will initialize like this. Label, this.label equals null. Then we have this text box, this.customer. We will initialize it, and the description, name description, then the drop-down for the business partner group, and a checkbox. Here, what we have done, apart from this text box button that we have created earlier, now we have this Add Customer label, a customer name text box, a customer description text box, a drop-down for business partner group, and a checkbox for the customer. Here, this control I have already explained for the v text box button, where we need the lookup for that. For a label, we have again a container div, then these framework classes on this particular div, then this label control, this vis.controls.vLabel, where we will provide the display name for the label and the element, then view, mandatory, and operable parameters. Then, the control wrap for this label control. We will add this control here in the customer label div, and then, again, we will fetch or get the control that will create the control on the UI. We will add customer.getControl, which will get you the control, and we are appending that control onto this div, then appending it into our container div, and then finally appending it to the left section. Similarly, for the text box, we have the parent div, the container div, then the framework classes, which we will use to create the control. Then, we use the vTextBox. This is the field name for the control, and we define whether it's mandatory, read-only, updatable, and the type of control. Again, the framework class has to be appended to this control wrap, and we will append this control here. After that, we will get the label for this control and append it to the left section. Similarly, for the description text box, then for the drop-down, the container div, and framework classes need to be defined. For the drop-down, we also need a lookup to bind the combo so that it will display a drop-down for this particular control. This is the context, window number, and the parameter for the ID, which we will pass as 0. Then, we will bind a drop-down for the table direct. As you might know, in the foreign key table as a reference, we use table or table direct. So, in our case, if we are passing the same column element as the column name for a parent table, we will use table direct. This is the column ID and the parameter for the mandatory or updatable fields. Then, the combo box will display as a drop-down. This is the column name, the mandatory parameter, the read-only flag, and the updatable parameter. Then we define the lookup and the length of this particular value. After that, we fetch the controls and display or add the label for this control. Right now, we have passed a fixed value here, but this should be picked from the message screen, as we have done earlier. Finally, we append this control to the left side div. For the checkbox control, we define the container div. Then we use the vCheckbox control, set the label name, and define mandatory, read-only, updatable, and a few other parameters. We pass this data and append the checkbox control to the left side section. These are a few controls that we have created on our page, showcasing different types of controls. For more details on these references and other controls, you can download the source code for the framework where these controls are used. You can also go through the controls.js class to see how these controls are used and what parameters are available. Now I will build this and refresh my link. As you can see, these are the controls that we have created. We have added a label, text box, and description for the name and description fields. Then, we have added a dropdown for the business partner group, which is taken from the customer master screen. This dropdown displays values from the respective list. Lastly, we have included a checkbox control. So, these controls have been added from this section and appended to our left side container. Now, on the right-hand side, we will add a grid. We are using the W2 UI grid, which is a third-party library that we've integrated into the Onfinity framework for use on both screens and pages where applicable. It's up to you which control or third-party library you prefer to use for displaying data on the screen. In this example, we will demonstrate how to use the W2 UI grid. Please refer to Part 2 of the Pages video for a detailed session on how to bind the grid to the pages. That concludes this session. Thank you for attending.